Welcome back to the Gun Collective podcast. My name is John Patton. As per usual, we have an amazing guest. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one today. We've got a good conversation coming your way. But first, we got to talk about our sponsors. Go over to vertx.com, vertx.com. Get yourself some EDC gear or some apparel, maybe some organization for your vehicle. I use it all the time. All the time, literally every day, either my bag, the stuff in the battle wagon, you name it. I'm always using Vertex gear. And if you use the code TGC, you get yourself a sweet discount, at least 15% on holidays. They bump that up to sometimes 20, 25, 30% off. You name it. It's going to be awesome. Vertex.com. Use the code TGC. Okay. Today, my guest is Brian Festa from We the Patriots. Now, I'm going to let Brian explain this, but I have some skepticism, some reservations about what they got going on. So we've got Brian on the show to talk through it. Brian, how are you, man?
I'm doing great, John. Thank you for having me and allowing me to tell you a little bit about our organization.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You have some passion, and that's very, very clear in our communication so far. And I'm trying to understand more about what We the Patriots is. So can you give us like this, like the elevator pitch on what it is that you guys do?
Sure. So it actually started out in 2020, so July 4th, 2020, right in the midst of chaos in this country. Riots everywhere, fires in the streets, lockdowns, mandates. I don't know where you stand on mandates and lockdowns. I'm completely against it. And I have a son who is severely vaccine injured. And so I got involved in health freedom way before COVID. We're talking about like a decade ago. So it actually started out centered on more health freedom stuff, although we did do free speech cases, religious freedom. But we started out, we had my business partner, Dawn Jolly, who's a Navy veteran. She also served during 9/11, actually. And she's a badass, let me tell you. You put a gun in her hand and she knows how to use it too. All right. Because again, she's Navy trained. We've always been 2A supporters, but we didn't start this organization as a 2A organization. And I'm going to be straight with you. It's not a 2A organization. That's not all we do. It is a constitutional rights organization, individual freedom organization. Although we're not libertarian, we're not associated with any party, we're very libertarian minded. We don't like the government telling us what we can do with our lives, what we can do to protect ourselves and our families, what we can put in our bodies. So it's more of a global approach to fight government and corporate overreach. And so, when we first connected, you're like, I never heard of you before. I know, that I trust the guys that have been around decades that have proven they've done it, but, organization just comes out of nowhere. I don't really trust that. And hey, that's healthy skepticism. You should be skeptical because there are a lot of people out there. I'll call them robber barons, grifters, whatever you want to call them, but they're there for the cash grab, right? They're not there to really change anything in this country and protect your rights. We don't have millions and millions of dollars, and that's because we don't talk that game. We don't promise things we can't deliver. If we did, honestly, we'd have a lot more money because the organizations that I know of, honestly, it's true. The organizations that I know of, like for health freedom, for instance, there were organizations out there promising that Fauci was going to hang. We'll have him hanging. We're going to have the public hangings, the trials. And there are people that bought into that. There's one organization I know of. I'm not going to mention names because that's not how I roll, but made like $30 million doing that. Saying they were going to be public hangings. We're going to take down the CDC. I said that's never going to happen. People didn't like me because I didn't say what they wanted to hear. Sure. But as a result, we don't have millions of dollars. So maybe I'm a stupid businessman, but I do have some integrity. And it's just not the way that we're going to go. So why did we get into Second Amendment work? Well,
hold on. I'm going to stop you there. You said, so is this a 501c3? Is that what you guys are?
Yes, we're a nonprofit. People do like their tax deductions. They don't like to donate if they can't write it off on their return. So yes, we are a nonprofit.
Agreed. Yeah. So you started in July of 2020. Why?
Well, we saw what was going on in this country. And like I said, we already had something called the Connecticut Freedom Alliance. So we started in Connecticut, the belly of the beast, right? The Northeast is ridiculous. You don't have gun rights there. I'll talk about that after. But I lived there for 44 years. There was a decision out of New York, I think it was just yesterday, the day before yesterday, where a judge in New York, I don't know if you saw this, said, you're in a court, this is a New York courtroom. We don't have the Second Amendment here, something to that effect.
Oh my God.
I actually just read that on, it was an article that my brother shared with me, actually, that was on, someone posted on Twitter. And the judge actually said something to the effect, I'm just paraphrasing, but this is New York. The Second Amendment doesn't apply here. Really?
That's insanity.
I thought this was the U.S. Constitution. I thought that's all 50 states last time I checked. But anyway, we saw what was going on in the country. That was during the George Floyd riots, all these, cities burning, people looting, lockdowns, mandates. And Don and I looked at each other and said, you know what? This is not just a Northeast, a Connecticut problem. It's really a global problem, but it's definitely a national problem. We gotta start a national organization. What we had done with the Connecticut Freedom Alliance was really that was more of a political organization. We did lobbying at the state house with legislators, but we said, we're not winning anything there, especially in these deep blue states. We need to fight back in court. And naturally, I'm a lawyer. So, my background was, I've worked in employment law, civil rights, stuff like that. But in the belly of the beast, again, the political views and just the values of the state of Connecticut don't align with my own. Although we're a nonpartisan organization, I am what people would describe as conservative. I guess that's what you call anyone who's freedom-minded, who believes in, respecting the Constitution and the rule of law, that you're labeled a right-winger because you love the Constitution and this country. So anyway, we said, we got to do something national. Let's create a national public interest law firm that fights back against all this craziness, not just the health freedom stuff, but let's fight back for free speech, freedom of religion, Second Amendment rights was on our list, and a whole host of other things. You can see it on our website at wethepatriotsusa.org, all the stuff that we're involved in and that we cover. But yes, last year the year before, maybe it was the year before last, we finally started filing some litigation regarding Second Amendment rights. But really, I hate even just saying just Second Amendment rights. It's a basic human right? The right to protect yourself and your family. And obviously, we use guns for other things too. We like sport, we like hunting. That's a whole different, conversation. But I'm talking about the basic human right of being able to protect your own person and your family. I have children, all right? And I live in Idaho now. We're headquartered in Idaho now. Idaho's a great state for gun rights. But, regardless, I want to protect that for all Americans. I don't care if you live in New York, LA, Chicago. All right, you should be able to walk down the street and have a firearm. And guess what? I'm not just talking about open carry. No, you should be able to concealed carry, open carry. You have a basic human right to keep and bear arms. There was no qualification in the Second Amendment when the founding fathers wrote the Second Amendment, drafted it. They didn't put an asterisk. Well, except if you live in a big city where there's a lot of crime, then you can't have a gun. Or except if there's been a lot of mass shootings, school shootings or something, then we have the right to confiscate your weapon. No, none of that is in there, because you know what? They dealt with that tyranny from the king. From
Brian, I'm gonna stop you there. I feel like you're going on like you're on national TV and you're trying to compete with Tucker Carlson's voice and all these ease up. It'll be okay. We're gonna have a good conversation. I only
have two settings, John, on and off.
Sure. I get it. And you're trying to get the talking points and all that, but I think it's more important to try and understand the roots of all this. So you said you saw what was going on in the country and you wanted to start this organization. Well, what makes you different than any of these other nonprofits that are out there? Because at least in the Second Amendment space, we've got some really strong leaders in that space, in the nonprofit and gun rights organizations. So what makes you different from them? Obviously, you said You've got a First Amendment and constitutional focus as opposed to a very specific Second Amendment focus. But is that the only thing that separates you guys? Like, what else?
Well, I mean, another thing would be, like I said, our integrity. We put our money where our mouths are. When we say we're going to file a lawsuit, we file it and we show you all of the papers, the pleadings. I don't just go on shows like this and do talking points. I will say I'm used to only having a very
Right.
short amount of time,
I can
15,
tell.
20
I
minutes.
can tell. That's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Sometimes only 5 minutes. And they say, Brian, get everything you can in once.
Yeah. I've
That's what I'm used
I've done the talk radio stuff, and you get 30 seconds, go. You know what I mean? I get it.
Right.
Get
So
it.
I talk very fast and go. So I'll slow down a little bit. But we're very transparent. We're very accessible. Okay. Anyone can call me. I take calls from people all over the country. And sometimes they can't believe if I'm calling them too, like not just donors, people that have legal questions, people that need help. They might be interested in filing a lawsuit. I call them personally. I do most of those calls myself. I'm very hands-on. That's twofold. Number one, because we just don't have a huge staff. I don't have 100 people to make calls, 100 lawyers to make calls. But we're at the growing stage. We're a startup at this point. But also, even if I had 100 people, I'd still make a lot of those calls because I like the personal connection and being able to engage with people in a way that a larger organization just simply can't do. You're not getting the president, the CEO of places of organizations like, GOA or NRA calling you personally. That's not going to happen. Maybe if you donate a couple $1 million, but you're not going to get those people calling you. But even if you do donate even just $10 a month or something, you will get access to me. I'm an attorney now. Listen, am I the best attorney that's ever lived in the area of Second Amendment? No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to get out here and say I'm number one. I have to prove that first. We'll get a couple Supreme
Agreed.
Court victories, and then you might be saying that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe.
But the other thing I want to say is, as far as the actual quality of the legal work, I'm not going to say that we're necessarily any different or there's something special about us. I'm not going to sit here and say that. But what I am going to say is we are another organization now that's in the fight. And isn't that a good thing?
Absolutely.
Don't we want more attorneys doing this? We don't want to restrict it to just 2 or 3 organizations that are going to do all the work. Why not have 10 more organizations pop up? As long as they're actually going to do the work and do it well, then why not have more?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you that we need all hands on deck when fighting this bullshit, because honestly, the fight has never been harder than it is right now. And the reason that I throw up a wall anytime somebody tells me we are a nonprofit and we're suing the government is because I've seen this. I've seen this play before. You know what I mean? I've seen organizations pop up, even long-standing organizations, just soaking up money, doing, and I'm not saying you are fear-mongering, but I have seen other organizations do the fear-mongering. You're going to lose your rights unless you give us money. I've seen that bullshit before. And I have, obviously, again, I want to make sure the audience understands this. I've not seen this from you. However, my BS radar goes off anytime somebody says we're going to do it. However, on that same token, you have some things already going. You've been in for just about 4 years, and you've got multiple lawsuits against multiple governments going on right now. So why don't we dive into the first one? That's, I believe, New Mexico. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me about that case.
Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. I'm sure you're familiar with her. She is just, I don't know any other. I'm going to be kind. I'll refrain from the profanity, but she's a witch. And she absolutely
She's a real see you next Tuesday.
Yeah, exactly. She's another one that I could see making a statement that we shouldn't have a Second Amendment. This is New Mexico. The spirit of aloha we heard out of the Hawaii Supreme Court. Absolutely ridiculous. But she does not respect the Second Amendment. So last year, I think it was around early September of last year, she issued an edict. I'm going to call it an edict, an executive order, saying that in any cities where there's been certain high-risk areas, they call them, we are not going to have any more carrying of firearms. Now, this wasn't just open carry. I don't care if you have a permit, anything. You could not carry anymore.
Oh,
in the
that's right.
city.
So now I'm remembering she basically tried to nullify the Second Amendment with an executive order or whatever they actually that
Yes.
edict. She tried to come out and say, "Oh, you're not allowed to carry a gun at all when we say so."
Right. And in certain areas where there had been high crime. Now, ironically, the reason there's high crime in the city of Albuquerque is because of her policies and her colleagues' policies in the legislature that have let people pour into this country over the border unchecked, all kinds of crime. I mean, our plaintiff, Dennis Smith, because obviously we filed the lawsuit as the lead plaintiff, but we have an individual as well. Dennis Smith, he's a retired gentleman who lives in the city of Albuquerque, law-abiding gun owner for like 30 years or something. And, you know, he carries it. Obviously, he goes to public parks and public spaces in Albuquerque. And when he said it's gotten so bad that, you know, he can't even feel safe sitting on his porch anymore. There's, you know, everything from, you know, shootings to, you know, wild dogs running in the street. I mean, what he describes is just unbelievable. Albuquerque has become a dump now. I'm sorry to say that, but it used to be a great city, but they've absolutely ruined it with their liberal policies. And so now what's happened is he doesn't feel safe anymore. So he said, no, I'm still going to carry, you know, if I'm bringing my grandkids to the park or something, I'm still going to have that on my, you know, on my hip. I'm still going to do it. And so he filed a federal lawsuit. We won. We were the first organization that rushed into court and filed that. Others quickly joined us before we even got to the hearing. There were others alongside of us.
Sure.
But we did it immediately. And we got a temporary restraining order. We won the temporary restraining order because the judge, you know, had to admit that this is just too broad. And based on the criteria for getting an emergency, you know, restraining order against the governor, he had to grant it. He did grant it. And Raul Torres, if you remember, the attorney general, actually said he was not going to defend us. He said, because you know what? And now he's a Democrat. He served in the Obama DOJ. But even he said, you know what? I can't support this. This is blatantly unconstitutional. So I will not defend the governor, even though that's my job. The AG usually defends the governor.
Right.
He said, I can't defend. I swore an oath to the Constitution to uphold it. So Governor Grisham, I'm not going to defend you in court. So she had to hire private counsel to defend her in court, or use her own in-house counsel, I think is what she did.
All on taxpayer money, I'm sure.
Yes. Yes. They have unlimited fun. You want to talk about a grift? You want to talk about a grift? Talk about the governments of the states and the United States that just have unlimited money and have these attorneys in there that can just litigate for years and years and years on your dime to take down things like the Second Amendment, the First Amendment, and so on. Anyway, I got to get off my soapbox.
I feel like that I touched the nerve on that one.
well, I worked in state government for 15 years, all right, in the Northeast, and I saw a lot of disgusting things. I'll just put it that way.
I get it, especially up in Connecticut, dude.
Well, why do you think I'm in Idaho now?
Yeah. Well,
that's not perfect.
A good friend of mine and a big YouTube creator, Guns and Gadgets. His name's Jared. He was in Massachusetts for many, many years and recently moved because of similar nonsense. So we've got this case in New Mexico, and you guys are the defendant. Is that?
We are the plaintiff.
Yeah.
We filed the lawsuit against the governor. Now, she actually was, unfortunately, the preliminary. So there's three things. There's a TRO, which is a temporary restraining order. That's the emergency thing, just to stop the order until you can.
And then did you get the preliminary injunction or no?
They ruled against us on the PI. So we did not get the preliminary injunction. So we appealed that now to the 10th Circuit. Okay. So now we're at the 10th Circuit out in Denver, I think it is. And we filed our briefs, and they filed their reply. We filed our reply brief. And so now we're just waiting to get a hearing date. I know this takes a long time, but you know how this works. The courts, nothing moves fast in court. Okay, so we're waiting for them to schedule a hearing. And then Cameron Atkinson, who's a lead attorney that works for us, is the lead attorney in this case. He's awesome. He's done 2A litigation all over the place. He's even litigated in D.C., New York, Connecticut, here in New Mexico with us. So he's done a lot of work for us, and he argued this case when it was at the district court. He's going to be arguing out at the Second Circuit. We have some great organizations that have partnered that are their cases have been consolidated with ours, I should say. And the Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, they're on here. We really respect what they've done, and we want to work alongside these organizations. We don't want to be competitors because we're not really competitors. They focus
Right.
just on 2A stuff, but we don't. So we're not really here to crowd their space. We want to work with them.
Sure. I think that makes sense. So what other states are in the 10th Circuit? I can't remember because all the way they're laid out is fucking confusing, to be honest with you. The circuits are just nonsensical.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously New Mexico, because that's where we are, right?
Right.
But it's got Colorado, because that's where it's based. Like I said, Denver's where we'll be arguing, and then it's Wyoming, Utah, and Oklahoma, and
But not Texas.
Kansas too. No, not Texas, but those are some states that really should be.
Yeah.
I mean, Colorado. I don't want to say they're lost, but they might as well be Connecticut. It's California now. It's Connecticut. It's California. But yeah, New Mexico, Colorado, Wyoming, Utah, Oklahoma, and Kansas. So those are some states in there that should be good 2A states. I mean, Utah and Oklahoma and Kansas at least.
I mean, Utah's up there near the top. So what do we expect this to go to the Supreme Court level? Because if this is in Colorado, I suspect you may run into some problems. These Denver politicians that pretend to be judges are likely to cause us more problems because they have with Colorado. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the good news is this is not Colorado State Court, the state Supreme Court. This is the 10th Circuit, which are appointed judges by the president. So we have some Trump appointees and maybe even still some Bush appointees hanging out on that court. Now, there are quite a few Obama appointees and Biden appointees too. But remember, President Trump appointed an amazing amount, incredible amount of federal judges while he was in there for 4 years. And if he gets reelected, I'm sure he'll be appointed a heck of a lot more. So they're not all liberals sitting on that court. We have a mix.
Good to know.
And so I think, well, it's like the Supreme Court, the federal judiciary, all the judges are appointed by the president. So it's not like whoever's co-opted Colorado, which of course, they have a very liberal legislature and governor. They're not the ones that get to make the decisions about federal judges. They're not involved in it at all. Hopefully, I'm hopeful we'll actually win, because if you read our brief, and it's all linked on our website, you can look at the legal updates. We have a whole article about this case, or several articles actually. They completely ignored what the U.S. Supreme Court did in the Bruen case, talking about the historical tradition going back to 1791 in this country.
History and tradition.
They went to the Reconstruction era and said, no, I think 1868, they said, and later is all we have to look at. We're not going to look back at the founding of this country and what the founders intended. Flies in the face of what, Justice Thomas, Justice Alito have said over the years, that no, you have to look at the historical tradition of firearms regulation. And this just simply doesn't fit. Just picking, okay, now she's restricted it to public, because she did a revised order, public parks and playgrounds in any cities, again, with the high rate of crime. But where is that in our nation's history? If you go back to 1791, I don't see any historical documents. And that's what Bruen case said. The government, the burden is on the government, the state or federal government, to prove that there is a historical tradition of regulating firearms this way. They simply can't meet that burden. So I think the 10th Circuit, I respect the judges on the 10th Circuit. I think they are going to rule the right way. If they don't, though, we will be appealing to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Absolutely.
Mark my words. This isn't bullshit, as you say. You will see our appeal filed, because we're at the Supreme Court on another case. It's not a 2A case. We have a case right now pending before them that they're seriously considering taking up. So, and we've been there before too. We've had cases at the Supreme Court.
So the hope is that we fight back against the governor of New Mexico and say, hey, you can't do this. Are there any chances for, I don't know, like ramifications for her being a total piece of shit? Because when I look at this, I go, this is a politician that is completely out of order. Not only that, but she is using our tax dollars, like we talked about, to fight us, which is beyond, it's repugnant. It's disgusting that she is doing this. And here we are. you know, if we win, is there any like punishment for her doing this?
Unfortunately, the only punishment is to vote her out of office.
Oh,
She's got what's called qualified immunity as
right.
a government official. I know you've heard that before, and I
Sure
know
have.
you probably think it's bullshit, and a lot of legal scholars actually agree with you, believe it or not. You're not alone in that. And I don't think there should be that level of immunity. Now, there has to be some degree of immunity. You can't be sued for every little thing. Otherwise, all the governor would be doing is be fighting cases in court, because no matter whether you're on the
Right.
left or the right, you're going to have people suing you all day long. So there has to be some degree of immunity, but I don't think it should be this blanket immunity that you can just blatantly violate the Constitution and get away with it with no consequences. I think that's BS, but all we
It's
can do
more
at this
for
point,
me, it's more of a thing of, you know, she's using our money to fight us, and we're basically paying to potentially lose rights, and I find that absurd, just to its core, absurd. So what I would propose, and I, you know, obviously this holds no ground on a podcast, but I would propose that if she loses, she pays that back with her own salary.
that would be
But
great.
yeah, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it? Just
That would
like
be awesome.
what did Warren Buffett say? Something to the effect of, "I know how to make Congress effective. Just stop paying them." Wouldn't that be
You know
amazing?
what? He's right. He's right, because honestly, if they weren't getting their pockets lined, if they weren't getting paychecks, the only people that would actually run are people that actually believed in this country and wanted to defend the Constitution.
Would be amazing. Would be an amazing
You
change.
and me would be in DC right now.
I don't know, man. Do you think you could be a politician? Do you think you have that in you?
Um, I don't know if I have the stomach for it. Is the problem, because there's so much disgusting stuff, and you saw how my fire comes through. I got a lot of fire in my belly.
Right.
I'd get myself in big trouble, because I'd call people out on their bullshit right on the House floor,
Right.
and I'd use all these rules about decorum and having to speak a certain way at a certain time. I don't think I could color inside those lines, John.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, this is tip of the iceberg. I've ranted many times on this show, and Jesus Christ, I cannot stand politicians these days. Like, I want so badly for the country to be righted, you know, the course of the country to be corrected, and I just can't stand the way things get done anymore. It's very difficult. So we talked about the New Mexico thing. That's a 10th Circuit. Do we have any kind of time frame idea of when that's going to get picked up, or if it'll get picked up?
Well, they have to pick it up. So the 10th Circuit,
Okay, so they have to do it. That's good
yeah,
to know.
it's not a discretionary thing. But the Supreme Court is discretionary, but it's a mandatory appeal. They have to hear every case that's appealed.
Got it.
So we will get a hearing. I don't know. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I'm hoping it'll be within the next 2 or 3 months. But I could be wrong about that. Sometimes, I mean, they could even push to the fall. I hope not, because, you know, this has already been sitting up there. When did we appeal it? Was it January or December? I don't know. It's been a while. It's already been like 5 months or something. It's been sitting up there. So, you know, I'll have to go back and check that, but it's been a while. So I'm hoping it'll be within the next couple of months, 2 or 3 months at most, and hopefully have a decision before the end of the summer. And then if they rule against us, like I said, we'll be filing that cert petition to the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm sure the other organizations are going to do that as well and join us in that. But yeah, I mean, listen, there's a lot of other great work that's being done out there, and we're not always going to be the lead plaintiff, but on this one,
Right.
we are. You'll notice it's consolidated under our case because we were the first one in the gate. And we're proud of that, because we want to be in this fight. We want to be known as an organization that stands up for Second Amendment rights, for all constitutional rights. We're doing some other great work in Connecticut too. I can tell you about that if you have a minute.
No. I got no more time. I'm kidding. Yeah, tell me about it. I want to hear about this stuff, because I think, you know, when we've had, like I said, many times, we've had organizations try and blow smoke up our ass, and I feel like I have a duty to my audience to try and sort of ward off that bullshit. You know what I mean? So tell me about what you got going in Connecticut. The New Mexico thing sounds like a very positive thing, potentially very, very good for us. Tell me about Connecticut.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, the last thing I'll say about New Mexico, in some ways, it would actually be great if we got to the Supreme Court, because a ruling in our favor would mean no more executive orders of that kind, because she was sort of testing the waters. She's the first governor that's gone that extreme by executive order and tried to do this, and we need to nip that right in the bud. That can't happen
And she
anyway.
doubled down on it. She made the initial statement, people freaked out, and then she did it. She doubled down and said, no, what I say goes. And a whole bunch of, if you followed the case, it was a whole bunch of bullshit coming out of her mouth. Okay, let's switch gears. Connecticut, talk to me.
So Connecticut, we actually have two cases. So in June of 23, the Connecticut legislature, for the first time ever, now they've always had open carry of firearms. Now they have concealed carry permits, like most states, where you need to get a permit to concealed carry, but open carry was always allowed in Connecticut. Believe it or not, even as left, as blue as they are, they've always had open carry. And I lived there for almost my whole life. So in 23, though, in June of 23 of last year, they decided that they were going to do away with that. It's too many mass shootings. Of course, Connecticut's where Sandy Hook happened. Too much. We've got to do away with open carry, as if law-abiding citizens open carrying are the reason that we have, mass shootings or something. It's so ridiculous. The crime in our city, none of those are law-abiding gun owners in Hartford and Bridgeport and all those places.
Literally, so anyway, by definition, that's not how it works.
Well, it's not. The strictest gun laws in the country, as you know, are in the city of Chicago, and they have the highest amount of crime using firearms. I don't call it gun crime because there's no such thing as that. But the highest amount of crime, people who use firearms to commit crimes, is in the city of Chicago. So it doesn't work. So anyway, Connecticut, though, still is feeding that garbage to the constituents, and people are still eating it up and electing these people. And unfortunately, the legislature passed a ban on open carry in 23. Okay. And Governor Lamont signed it into law. He's a radical left-wing Democrat. He signed it into law. And we immediately filed a lawsuit. It was passed on Saturday night, I think. They had an emergency session. And Monday morning, we had that filed already. Wow. Because we were waiting. I mean, that's our home state originally. That's where we were incorporated. We were keeping a really close eye on this. We were the first ones to file that lawsuit. That is still
so basically you knew it was coming, and when he signed it, you were like, time to go.
We already had the brief prepared and everything. Right. We already had it written because we knew it was happening. So all we had to do was click send, submit on the electronic filing system, and get it into court. And we did that. Now, that was a whirlwind weekend because we had our first ever national conference here in Boise. So Dawn and I were here trying to run that. It's a 2-day conference. And I'm on the phone with our lawyers. He's sending me, I'm editing it on my phone and stuff, and trying to get it off in Connecticut from Idaho. But I did that. But that's how we roll. We're small. It's all hands on deck. So even though I was up on stage running this conference, we had Charlie Kirk there, I had Steve Deace, I had all these people, and yet in the background, I'm backstage trying to text with my lawyers about the Second Amendment case. It was great, though. I love that kind of stuff. That gives me a rush. I love working like that, and we want to do a lot more of it. So that's one case in Connecticut. That's at the district court level. We actually haven't gotten a hearing yet. The state has been postponing and slow walking this.
Sure.
And we don't even have a hearing yet on that.
How nice of them.
I think they filed a motion to dismiss, and we filed our reply, and we're just waiting to get a hearing now. The other thing, though, is we have another case in Connecticut against Merrick Garland, the AG, because we have a combat veteran there who also happens to be an attorney, but he's a long time, firearms owner, permit holder, and we're challenging the post office rule, this ridiculous rule that came out in the 1990s that suddenly, because there's post office shootings, I can't go. Now, there's some of these post offices, you've seen them, they're in strip malls, they're in plazas.
Yep.
They share a wall with, say, a convenience store, one of those places, Lotto, buy beer, whatever. One of them that he goes to is literally in a strip mall like that. So he can go, it shares a wall. I can walk into the Lotto place, buy a scratch ticket or whatever, a 6-pack of beer. But then if I walk in the next door over in the same building, I'm committing a federal crime if I have a firearm on me, which is just absolutely ridiculous. So we're challenging that, and we're hoping to get a hearing in that soon. We already filed a federal lawsuit. So on behalf of David Nastry, who's the combat veteran attorney that I told you about.
Okay. So we've got the open carry and the post office thing both in Connecticut, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So that'll be the Second Circuit. They have not been friends to us, but
no, they have not.
we're going to fight there anyway, and hopefully get to the Supreme Court. Because again, once you get there, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, it's interesting watching what the Supreme Court has done in recent years. It was like we just turned a corner, and we've seen, at least in recent weeks, we've seen some really interesting victories for the Second Amendment, for gun owners, for freedom in general. And I find it kind of fascinating watching people freak out, because I want to get your thoughts on this. So it seems like the United States as a whole has, at least politically, been changed by, how do I phrase this? People are legislating based on feelings and not logic or reason.
Right.
And I want to know what your, the organization's plan is to sort of fight that. Are you guys going to start lobbying? Like, are you as a C3, I know you have certain regulations. What's your plan for navigating future cases? So you've got some really strong cases going. What are you looking at in the future here to try and combat all of the bullshit that we're up against?
We would like to start a C4 at some point. We don't have one right now. So unfortunately, as a 501c3, we can't do legislative lobbying,
Right.
political campaigning, stuff like that. But, our strategy, because as you correctly noted, we've had some amazing decisions, some great decisions for Second Amendment rights, First Amendment rights coming out of the U.S. Supreme Court. We feel the time is now. Before the composition of the court changes, we need to get as many of these lawsuits filed, which is one of the reasons, John, that we jumped into this fight. You asked at the outset of the podcast, how did you get involved in this? Well, one of the reasons was we looked and said, hey, look at the Bruen decision. That was just in 22. So that was only 2 years ago.
Right.
We said, look at the Bruen decision. Yeah, this court actually respects Second Amendment rights. For the first time in decades, we have a court that is strong on the Second Amendment. Let's challenge all these laws. We're even going to start challenging pistol permits, like regular permits.
Oh, wow.
Because we believe in constitutional carry. That's the position of our organization. Okay. Now, granted, somebody just got out of jail, they got a felony or something like that. All right, there's certain situations, background checks. We can talk about all that. But I'm talking about you and me. I'm talking about the ordinary American citizen. There's no reason to be putting people through the ringer like this. Out here in Idaho, you can buy a firearm from anyone. You can just buy it. Your friend can sell you something. There's no paperwork you have to fill out. There's no background check. Like you can literally meet someone in a parking lot and just buy
cash
buy a gun.
and carry.
Yeah. And that's actually how it was in the time of the framers, the founders of our country. And that's what they intended. It's a right. It's a right to keep and bear arms. Congress shall not infringe. I mean, I know you don't want me to get into the whole history.
Go for it, man. Say what you need to say.
But I mean, it's always been a sacred right. The founders of this country said these were God-given rights. And you've talked about this in the podcast. So I know your listeners are very well educated on the history of the Second Amendment and the Constitution. A lot of them probably know more than I do. Just because I'm an attorney doesn't mean I know everything. Okay. I've met a lot of attorneys that, don't know the things that they should know. Okay. I'm barred in 2 states now, Connecticut and Idaho, and then a bunch of federal courts and the Supreme Court as well. But that doesn't make me an expert on constitutional law. I'm learning. I'm still learning. I study it. And obviously I'm filing these cases and we're litigating and we're learning more every day. But hey, if there's people out there listening that have ideas of other strategies we can take, or if you have a case you think you'd want to be a plaintiff, if your rights are being infringed wherever you live, because I know you have listeners all over the country, probably in other parts of the world too, but you have listeners all over the country. If any of you are listening and your rights are being violated in your state, your legislature just passed a crazy bill, or your governor's doing something crazy, please contact me. We were even looking for plaintiffs in Hawaii after we had that Supreme Court decision in the state of Hawaii. When they were saying the Second Amendment, the Bruen decision doesn't really matter.
You mentioned that earlier. I don't know enough about that case. Can you explain what the hell they meant by spirit of aloha? Because it sounded like some total made up horse shit.
Well, it absolutely was. And I can't say, listen, I've never lived in Hawaii, so I don't know exactly, what they mean by spirit of aloha. I'm not going to sit here and call it, bullshit, but, it's just, they said, from my understanding, I didn't, obviously we weren't involved in that case, but,
Right.
but there was a state court in Hawaii that said, that they were basically tired of the nonsense, in so many words, coming down from the Supreme Court. And there was a unanimous decision in February, where they ruled that, they don't have an obligation actually to, have any deference to the decisions of the U.S. Supreme Court, to abide by those decisions. I
So
mean,
they basically said, "Fuck you, we're doing our own thing." Is that what?
yeah,
Okay.
I mean, this is what they said. I'm actually just grabbed an article so I could refresh. This is a
Sure.
direct quote. Okay. They called, quote, the Second Amendment's brand new right to bear arms in public for self-defense. Brand new. They thought that what the Supreme Court ruled in Bruen was some new right that the U.S. Supreme Court was creating. They're so far off base. I mean, obviously,
Huh.
it's not a brand new right. If you read the Bruen decision, it's based on 1791, the
Right.
historical tradition of firearms regulation in this country. And this is another quote from Hawaii Supreme Court Justice Todd Edens. He said, conventional interpretive modalities in Hawaii historical tradition of firearm regulation rule out an individual right to keep and bear arms under the Hawaii Constitution. In Hawaii, there is no state constitutional right to carry a firearm in public. That's what he said. That's a direct quote from his decision. We want to challenge that. We believe firmly that's unconstitutional, and that needs to be overturned. So anyone living in Hawaii, I'm sure you've got at least a few listeners in Hawaii. If you want to challenge this, if you're a lawful firearm owner, you want to be able to carry in public, and you believe that you have the right, as you do, please contact us. You can email me directly. Give out my direct email.
Sure.
Brian,
Yeah. I mean, you plug the website, and we'll make sure that the links
okay,
are
it's
in the
Brian at
description of this.
wethepatriots.org, USA.org. Yeah, email me directly though, because I will get on this, and we're always searching for new plaintiffs. Again, I don't just come on these shows to pitch for donations. I want plaintiffs. I want more lawsuits to be filed.
Sure.
And all of the work we do is pro bono. Because we're a nonprofit, when I take someone on as a plaintiff, we don't charge a penny in legal fees.
Well, I would hope not. Yeah, I don't know I don't know how the other groups operate, but I would find that very off-putting. So
there are some organizations that have like a hybrid where they'll cover like most of the cost, but you have to cover some of it, things like that. But no, we do everything pro bono, and
sure.
Obviously the only way we can do that is with donor support, because I'm
Right.
not a billionaire. I don't have money to fund it.
Yeah, I don't either, unfortunately. If I did, this wouldn't exist. I would just
Right.
be so I would own a mountain and just disappear for a while. So
Sounds great.
I think the Hawaii thing is kind of absurd, because it comes down to states' rights versus the federal government's rights. And it's like a states' rights issue at its core, the way they're framing it. Like, oh, the state constitution does not have a Second Amendment. So they're saying that nullifies the federal constitution, the United States Constitution. Is that what I'm getting out of that statement?
That's what it sounds like. But apparently, some of these judges and justices need to go back to law school, because there's something called the 14th Amendment, and there's the incorporation doctrine. And what the incorporation doctrine is, the United States Supreme Court ruled that all of the Bill of Rights, all of those first 10 amendments, apply to the states through the 14th Amendment. So the states don't get it. They're not allowed to ignore the Bill of Rights. All of the Bill of Rights apply equally to the states as to Congress and the federal government. So again, that's a basic thing you learn in constitutional law in law school, like literally your first year or first semester, even in law school, you learn that the 14th Amendment means that the Bill of Rights applies to the states just equally as they do to the federal government. So I don't know where they're getting that from, because that's basic law, constitutional law 101.
That's absurd. It really is. What are some of the other things that you guys are tracking right now? Obviously, we're talking about Second Amendment stuff, but what other cases or issues are like really hitting your radar hard right now?
Well, I talked about health freedom work. I don't know where you stand on that. Obviously, free speech cases. I mean, the Second Amendment and First Amendment go hand in hand, right? The Second Amendment is there to protect all of our other rights. You've heard that a million times. You probably said it. But the First Amendment is so important too, because we need to be able to, what you're doing right now is protected by the First Amendment. Your show wouldn't exist in a country that doesn't have a First Amendment, right? Or would be even more banned than it is now. But the problem is, even though we live in this country that has a First Amendment, you are censored. I mean, you have a great audience, but you're still censored. You should have, instead of like one of your views, before I came on, I was looking at some of your episodes, some of your podcasts, and one of them had like 78,000. Another one had, I don't know, like 90,000. Your videos, if there were no censorship, should each be having like 5 million views, every single one of them. Like,
I mean, that would be nice.
You should, though. In a free market and true freedom, free space, where you weren't shadow banned on certain big tech platforms, you would have that. And so we also are involved in free speech rights. We don't have a case active at the moment on that particular issue, although we have a case in California that does involve speech. It's a religious freedom case, but it also involves speech. It's on behalf of a teacher. This is the insanity. This is a kindergarten teacher who's being fired because she won't use preferred pronouns to refer to her 5-year-old student. I mean, this is insane. I never thought I'd live to see this. This is not the America that I grew up in.
Hold up. A 5-year-old has preferred pronouns?
The parents and the school administration are pushing this teacher to assist essentially in this child's gender transition. It's a 5-year-old girl who wants to be called a boy. And Mirella Ramirez is a devout Catholic, and she said, I'm not doing it.
You know what? I find this whole thing fucking insane. It's insane to believe that a 5-year-old who can't even wipe their own butt would have the cognitive wherewithal to make a decision, a life-altering decision. And the parents are like, fuck it, let them pick. What? The kid was just picking up rocks on the ground and being like, this is the best thing ever. And we're pretending like that child has the ability and understanding of permanent change when their life has existed for 5 years. 2 to 3 of which they couldn't even speak correctly. But no. Pronouns are appropriate for a fucking kindergarten student. Not only that, but we're now forcing the public school system into this bullshit. This was an argument, and I would love to get your thoughts on this. So I really, when we were having the Starbucks argument a few years back, it was probably 5-10 years ago now, when people were protesting in Starbucks about firearms and the, whether you could or could not carry, that sort of thing started spreading, right? We started protesting in these various retail establishments. And I said, the problem here is that we are forcing people into a discussion that they don't want to be a part of.
Right.
We're forcing people into this as gun owners. I thought it was a negative thing for gun owners. Like, we're throwing a tantrum over a private business's decision to go, no, we don't want that here. And it's almost like the coin has been flipped here. And now we're seeing people forcing the school system into this shit. What's your stance on this?
Well, I'm just as outraged as you are. And maybe I'm not showing it because I've talked about this case so many times. I've done like so many interviews about this case because it's obviously a hot button issue. But yeah, I'm outraged because our tax dollars go to support this shit. And even here in Idaho,
crazy.
When I first moved out here in 22, by January of 2023, there was a school board meeting. We had over 1,000 people show up to protest it right here in Idaho, that they were trying to enact a bathroom and locker room policy that let you use whatever gender you want and all this stuff. We showed up. I spoke out against it. And there's a video of me that kind of went viral. I spoke out against it. And I said, this cannot happen. You are forcing your own religion. That's what it is. It's a state-sponsored religion, because my religion, I'm a Catholic, I'm a Christian. It says God created two sexes, male and female. That's it. Okay. And I quoted the Bible. I got up there and I said, but listen, what you're doing is you are forcing your state-sponsored religion so you have to teach, even if there's another student that's not involved in the conversation, you have a student sitting there and the teacher, just by referring to a girl as a boy, is teaching her class that it's okay for girls to be boys and boys to be girls. How is that allowed? I thought we're not supposed to have state-sponsored religions, but that is actually a contrary religious belief. So now you're actually creating a new set of religious beliefs. Hey, the bottom line is, I don't tell people what to believe. I don't tell them what religion you want to be or if you want no religion. This is America. But the point is, you cannot force things on my children, especially you're talking about a kindergartner, like you said, a 5-year-old that can barely even take care of themselves, go to the bathroom. They can't even write their name. They can't even read. These are kids that can't even read, and you're going to gender.
They don't even know what a pronoun is. They don't even know what a pronoun is.
It's right. I didn't learn about pronouns till I think like 2nd or 3rd grade. And I used to teach English, by the way. That was before I was a lawyer, but when I was in kindergarten, I didn't know what a friggin' pronoun was.
I am very much in the mindset of, I don't give a shit what people do as long as it doesn't affect me or my family, right? Like, I don't care if somebody wants to do that with their child. But the second you bring that shit into school and force it onto all the other kids, that's when I take issue. That's when I take issue is this absurdity that everyone has to live in this just bonkers mentality that's constantly changing, by the way. Constantly changing. This idea that you have, it's this Google gobble, one of us type mentality, where you cannot have an opinion that differs from this hive mind. And if you do, then tantrums abound. Like, holy shit, we're going to block traffic and throw up our flags and glue ourselves to the ground and all this other absurd shit, whether it's fighting foreign wars, whether it's in the classroom, whether it's gender identity. I feel like this shit is happening across the board. I do want to pivot. I want to try and understand, where does the money come from currently to operate your organization? Who's donating? What type of people are you after? Tell me about that.
Well, it's everybody. We have people who donate like $10 a month, $5 a month, all the way up to people that give us, once a year donations of $10,000 or $20,000.
Sure.
It's all public donations. We have no private funders. People like, George Soros and Bill Gates don't like us. They're not going to pour their money into We the Patriots USA. So we don't have any billionaire investors. It's all just ordinary people. Like, I'd say probably like 95% of our donors are what would be considered middle class, if there is a middle class anymore. It's really going to be just rich and poverty, I think, pretty soon. But, middle class are people, our most generous donors are people, John, that really can't afford to even donate. People write me a check for $500, and honestly, they're living paycheck to paycheck. So those people, we are so appreciative of every dollar. I don't care if it's even $1. Obviously, if I had, 100,000 or 1 million people each giving $1 a year, that would be great.
Sure, that'd be nice.
Enough to fully fund us. So that's what it is. We don't even get really grants right now. Most grants, as you know, are public grants. The biggest grant writer or the grant funders are the U.S. government and state governments. They don't give us any money. Obviously, right. We're fighting them, right?
Yeah, you're the enemy in that equation.
So, yeah, they don't give us any money. So and there's very few private conservative foundations that give grants, and their money's tied up, quite frankly, in most of these other large organizations that have been around a long time. And I get it, but it's sort of, after a while, there is a sense of frustration when you're starting out and you're trying to, sort of make your own way, because it's the rich get richer. All right. There's people out there writing $1 million checks to organizations that already have litigation budgets of $100 million. They don't need it as much. Like, you could stop donating them to them for the next decade and they'd be just fine. Whereas an organization like ours is either going to exist or not exist based on a gift like that. Like, that could be life-changing for us. So I think your dollar has the most impact helping a smaller organization. That's not to say stop donating to the larger organizations. I keep mentioning GOA because I love them. All right. I think they're an awesome organization. And I don't know what you feel about them, but I think they're really good. Maybe I see the look on your face. Maybe you don't love everything they've done, but I think they've done some great work. The Second Amendment Foundation. I mean, I think, please, I would encourage people to donate to them. I'm probably the only person that comes on podcasts and actually plugs other organizations. And I do that for other health freedom organizations like Children's Health Defense and places like that. But it's because I want to form like a partnership, like an alliance. The first organization we had was called the Connecticut Freedom Alliance. I love Alliance Defending Freedom. They do a lot of great work, especially with First Amendment work, religious liberty and free speech. So there's a lot of places you can give, but we are trying to make our own way. If you're interested, if you hear what I'm saying, you like what you hear, or you want to learn more about our organization, please reach out and consider making a donation to us. If you can't make a donation right now, like I said, maybe you can be a plaintiff, or maybe you know someone who could support us and you could tell them about us, tell them to check us out and see if they're interested in supporting us. But hey, I know Bidenomics has ruined this country right now. We're in really bad shape economically, and times are tight. So I don't expect, that most people are going to be able to step forward and give a whole lot. But like I said, even $10, if there's thousands of people doing it, that goes a long way.
Sure. I understand. I know we have a few friends at each one of these organizations, and everybody feels the economy. Everybody feels it. And when it comes to Second Amendment Foundation and GOA, I smiled. I made a face because they're good friends. Eric Pratt is going to be on the panel at GunCon. Adam Kraut is a longtime personal friend of mine, and he's with Second Amendment Foundation. He is going to be on the panel this year, the Second Amendment panel, among other groups. I totally agree. I think there could be a lot more support in terms of fighting the Second Amendment, and I'm eager to see what you guys pull off in these various cases that you have going on. We talked, the website is wethepatriotsusa.org, correct?
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, guys, if you are listening and you want to check it out, that's where you need to go, wethepatriotsusa.org. I will let y'all form your own opinions. The intent here was to try and ask the questions that you would ask. And I hope we got some good answers for you. Brian, I appreciate your time, man. I'm glad that we got a chance to chat. I'm very eager to see how things progress for what you guys have going on. You got some really good cases going, and I appreciate your time, man.
Absolutely. We'll keep you posted on our work.
Awesome. Maybe, if we get a big win, we'll have you back on the podcast to talk about it. I think that'd be a lot of fun. And that's going to be it for today, guys. Go to vertex.com and use the code TGC. Get yourself some apparel. You know what? The Delta Flex, I think it's called, the Delta LT. So I don't know. They've got some stretchy pants that are fantastic. I wear all the time. I also use their Ready Pack 2.0, and I think they've now got a newer Ready Pack even. Lots of different colorways. They're changing the colors all the time. So if you're looking for a specific one, check it out. The code is TGC and the website is vertx.com. As always, guys, we appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching along. We'll see you soon.